our focus should be on ensuring a more effective local administration, responsible fiscal management, and accountability. And the proximity of state governments to local governments makes them more suited for that than the more distant federal government. All politics is local. The federal government lacks the capacity to monitor every local level development or issue in this country. For instance, the federal government has little inclination or resources to find out whether Adamawa state government is fulfilling its obligations to say Ghanaian local government and to hold the state government to account. The federal government is simply too distant to monitor what happens at that local level. It is for the people of, say, Ghanaian local government in my state and those of other local governments to hold the state government to account. And in a federal system, it is our collective interest to strengthen the local level. On the question of political practice, for as long as our politics remains the domain of controlling godfathers at the federal and state level, devoid of internal party democracy, so long will our local government remain at the beck and call of whoever chooses contestants for local electoral offices. The point is that even if local government funds come directly from the federal government and without the mediation of joint state-local government accounts, the dominant role of governors rather than party members in selecting candidates for local electoral offices would still not ensure autonomous, effective, and responsive local government administration. Emphasis mine. Therefore, we need to find ways to ensure internal party democracy so that the selection of candidates for elections to the local and other levels is carried out by the generality of party members rather than a few godfathers. At the local government level in particular, we should indeed allow even independent candidates. My dear friends, the central government did not create local governments prior to military rule. And you will agree with me that we had a more effective and responsive local government administration there. I am a product of my native authority. I never knew anything about the regional government from my primary, my secondary education, not until I went to the university. The federal government started creating local governments across the country at the same time that we lost our heads to oil revenue. Thus, local governments have become even more dependent on the federal government than the state governments. That is an anomaly. It is our over-centralization of power and excessive concentration of resources at the federal level and the abandonment of due process and regulations under military rule that led to the state government's abuse of local administrations. That is what led to the pressure for direct federal allocation to local governments and the subsequent provision in our current constitution. If we amend our constitution to have a genuine federal system, rather than the near unitary system that we currently have, then there would be no need for statutory mandated direct federal allocation to local governments. There would be no need to enshrine the number of local governments in the Constitution. Other than direct fiscal allocation to local governments, what other rationale exists for enshrining the number of local governments in the Constitution and making the creation of additional ones virtually impossible for state governments? What if a local government such as the one that is hosting us today experiences rapid growth in population and for administrative convenience and effectiveness, the state government wishes to split it into two or more local governments? Why should such a split be made difficult for the state until the Constitution is amended? How many times are we going to amend our Constitution? I believe that the federal share of national revenues should be whittled down, while the allocation of states should be increased, including the funds that are going directly to local governments from the center. Ladies and gentlemen, all over the world, serious government tax their citizens and corporations to raise revenues for development purposes a service delivery. I was just talking to the U.S. Consul General when I said I'm opposed to this indigent thing. We should all have, we should feel that Nigeria is our own, no matter where we come from. But where we reside should be our home. And he said, in the United States is where you pay your tax. That determines your citizenship. So if we want to have a joint ownership of this country, please let us abandon this division. For that reason, governments work hard to promote economic development so as to create a strong tax base. In the days when I was growing up and when there was no oil, the local government system was funded by taxation. There was poll tax, there was kettle tax, there was radio tax, there was TV tax, there was bicycle tax. All and everybody paid. And that was the system. And they built roads, they built public secondary schools, they provided healthcare delivery, all the services that even the current state governments don't provide in some cases. That is what we did prior to military rule and prior to all significant contribution to our national revenues. That is what makes people hold their governments to account. Once they pay tax, they will hold their government to account. Currently, however, our local governments, like the state governments, look up to Abuja for monthly revenue allocations. That kind of dependence does not make for any meaningful autonomy, and it sure will not bring about meaningful development. Every tier of government should be reasonably self-reliant in terms of revenue. The revenues that it gets from the other tiers should only be supplementary, otherwise it will lack a reasonable degree of autonomy irrespective of what the laws say. That is the reality of the human condition and of politics. And that is why I have been calling for the devolution of more powers and revenues from the federal government to the state and regional government. It is not political posturing. It is a critical condition for the deepening of our democracy and promoting national development, peace, and security. You know what? If I'm president, what is it? Coal. And we will say, take your coal. Oil, Niger Delta, take your oil. But I have the power of taxation. If you raise or your income on coal is 1 trillion, I will say, okay, pay to the federal government 70%. That is their business. If you raise 10 trillion in oil, okay, take your money, but pay tax to the federal government 75%. My friends, as you deliberate, you may also wish to consider what would be the best institutional arrangement for managing intergovernmental relations. The codification of the procedures for elections, functions, removal from office, and the appointment of key local government officers, the administration of the federal capital territory, and designated federal areas, and above all, how to democratize our political parties is very, very important. Finally, I would like to wish you successful deliberations, and I thank you for inviting me, and I thank you for giving me time to share with you my thoughts on this great country. God bless you.
His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, DCOA, former Vice President of Nigeria.